killed on holy ground, and the Great Spirit has abandoned this place. The dead can no longer leave the mortal realm. Restless and enraged, they wander the earth, craving for more of living flesh. A fate worse than death, undeserving even for a stupid white man. Light still flickers within you, stranger. Go now. Leave this place. May the Great Spirit take pity on you. May your soul find peace in the spirit world.
I didn't read much into Blood West when I picked it up. I saw it was a shooter, saw its style, and kind of just assumed it'd be a boomer shooter or something like that. It was legit just one of those head empty, I see very positive on Steam, I buy gamble purchases. And yes, those can be a gamble. That review doesn't mean anything about whether or not you'll actually like it. It just says that you're likely to. Doesn't mean you will. Well, after the first 30 minutes, I quickly realized that Blood West actually leans more into being an immersive sim. There are a lot of different ways you can approach combat and exploration, and some of those ways will give you various rewards for searching every nook and cranny of the game, or no, just searching every nook and cranny of the game. Obviously, killing specific enemies will get you some goodies, but to get to those enemies, you need to search every nook and cranny of the game. It is what it is. Anyway, I've got to say, I was pleasantly surprised and hooked on this game from start to finish. In Blood West, you play an undead gunslinger that was revived by the soul of totems, by the totem of souls, to essentially do their dirty work in a land cursed and plagued with eldritch horrors beyond your comprehension. The story is straightforward, but interestingly cryptic. You never really know if the one you're trusting is really telling you the truth and therefore worth your trust. But what you do know is that you've got loot to find and monsters to kill. It's a really cool premise and it's executed wonderfully. I also really like the hoarding jokes that the undead protagonist makes because it perfectly describes my own problem with these games. I can't stop looting. Boobs jump scare. Sorry, that was just an excuse for me to do that, but that does segue pretty well into me talking about the visual style for the game. The game has this very retro, low poly look that gives it a lot of depth. You'd think it would all start bleeding together eventually, but no, it doesn't. The set pieces and different locations around the game world, especially per chapter, keep the game looking fresh regardless of where you go. The one thing that can get pretty repetitive though are the amount of caves you'll find yourself walking into. It's not so bad in Chapter 1 because those caves also have mines, but in Chapter 2 and 3 it starts feeling a little samey. Chapter 3 does vary it up a little bit more, but by that point you're just like, oh boy, another cave. Beyond that though, the game is hauntingly beautiful. Gameplay wise, the game is very deep. First things first, combat is simple, but you need to pick and choose your battles. You may be undead, but you aren't invincible. I didn't die a lot in the game, but when you do die, you get a debuff. A total of 3, apparently. Now, when I say I didn't die a lot in the game, what I really mean is, of the times that I did die, most of those were when I had a gold coin slotted in my inventory slot, or equipment slot. That gold coin blocks the debuff. So if I died, I didn't really lose anything except maybe a bit of time and a bit of progress. It just minorly inconvenienced me. The time that comes to mind where I did die without a coin was at the end of the game during the final boss fight, and that was honestly due to the way I built myself, to the way I built the undead protagonist, because the undead protagonist has a skill tree. Well, not a skill tree, has points that you can spend on skills to help fit whatever playstyle you're going for. Anyway, the debuff I got in that case was an EXP debuff, but drinking a purple revival potion quickly got rid of that, so I just shrugged and moved on. I don't recall if that's the only debuff you get on death, but that's the one I got there. So you might think that death is more of a hindrance than a punishment in this game, and for the most part that is true. But dying can also respawn a portion of enemies that you've already killed. Now, depending on what enemies get revived, it might not matter, but if those enemies are in a section where you often need to travel through to get where you need to go, it can be a pain in the butt. In my case, 50-50. Sometimes I was like, oh, it's just those guys over there. I don't care. I don't need to go over there anymore. And other times it's like, you picked the worst enemies to revive. That being said, that also comes down to how you manage your resources. Now, as I mentioned earlier, I have a looting problem. And when it comes to games like this, I'll hoard various items, weapons. I'll even buy weapons from a shop if there's a shop in the game. There is a shop in this game. And sometimes those weapons aren't even weapons that I'll use. That said, you purchase those guns and they come loaded. So if you're out of ammo in your other guns and you don't have any spare, having that extra gun sitting around with 6 bullets already in the chamber, hey, why not? Now, the good side of this habit of mine is that I could afford to be reckless in my gameplay, or at least more reckless than I suggest you should be earlier. In my case, because I hoarded so many bullets and this and the other, I could go guns blazing on occasion. Not all the time, but on occasion. I could play it like a boomer shooter, at least for a little bit. However, if you don't have enough resources for that and you play like I just said, or you play it wrong, you'll burn through your resources and it'll get tricky for you. That's why the game is advertised as a immersive stealth game. Stealth is generally how you want to play it, but you don't have to play it that way if you've got a crazy trigger finger and Hawkeye's accuracy. And again, if you spend your skill points to complement that, then you'll be even better off. Don't get me wrong though, the game won't make it that easy on you if you choose to draw every monster in sight into a fight. But I'll get to enemies in a moment. So conserve your ammunition, pick your fights wisely, and avoid any unnecessary ones if you can help it. I do want to say this real quick though, enemies don't hear your gun at the same range as you think they would. For example, if I have the revolver and I headshot an enemy, say 30 feet away from me, there's a good chance the enemy about 15 feet from them won't have heard it. Instead, they'll just notice their friend died, run up to the corpse like, what happened? And then you just shoot them too. But again, it's not that easy since there is a range penalty on damage. If you're not using the best weapon for firing at a distance, or if you're too far away in general, or if you don't have the right skills equipped to make some of your firearms a bit more effective at a distance, you'll do half to no damage and only piss off the monster you were trying to kill. So yes, overall, combat is a fantastic and rewarding experience, at least for me, because I like slower paced combat like this. If you like fast paced gunplay and stuff like that, you can get that occasionally in this game, but it's really not the way you should be playing it overall. But hey, do what you want. Enemy variety is also fantastic, as the amount of enemies you can find in Blood West grows per chapter. Some are exclusive to the chapter you find them in, while others join the base roster or are variants of the ones you have in the base roster. Most of them can be taken down with a single bullet to the head, but others can be taken down much faster if you use the correct ammo type for their head. You can also shoot them in the body too, but that's not as fun. So behold my words of rhyming wisdom. If they're radiating blue, a silver bullet will do. If you want to make them fold, pick a gold. If they hate fire, bring them to the kitchen. Meaning use a flammable bullet. Sorry, I didn't have anything for that one. Also, if the gold one wasn't clear, then simply put, the gold bullet deals a lot of damage. I like to think of the gold bullet as the I don't want to deal with this enemy right now bullet. Each enemy requires respect, so you need to treat them as the threats that they are. And even if one enemy alone isn't a threat, they can cause problems if joined by others, which oftentimes they'll be around others. Oh, on another note regarding enemies, some of them will use guns themselves. Nothing scarier than an eldritch monster carrying a rusty Winchester. But this can also be really good news for you, especially if all you have to rely on is a knife and an axe in your hand. Unless you're a melee build, then, do what you gotta do. But if you're in a pinch and don't want to rely on a melee weapon, then I'd recommend killing and looting an enemy with a firearm as quickly as possible. Doing so means you'll be able to loot their gun while it still has most of, if not all, of its rounds. If you kill them after they fired a shot or two, then expect the weapon to have 1 or 2 shots missing. Now for the big uns, the chapter boss fights. Frankly, the chapter boss fights weren't particularly difficult, but I did have a tricky time with the chapter 2 boss since I'd say that's the most unique one of the bunch in how you have to approach that fight. The other two were just shoot the weak points or shoot the boss in general. One more tidbit before I wrap up this review. There are other NPCs in this game, but they are few. For good reason, but they are few. Not only are they vendors you can trade with, but they are also quest givers that will give you XP and goodies if you complete their side quests. The side quests aren't all that difficult either and can often amount to find this or kill this, but the lore they add to the quests is where most of the fun comes from, at least for me. And let me tell you, some of these quests can go pretty out there. So Blood West is a game that I didn't know what to expect from, but what I got was a darn good time for something that roughly amounted to 12 to 20 hours. And most of that comes from how much you're doing and how quickly you're doing it. In my case, I finished the game at roughly 18 hours. It was a blast through and through, and for what it's worth, kept me on my toes and kept me pretty tense the entire time. It's not a very scary game, but I'm pretty sure there was at least one point where I was genuinely spooked. But maybe I'm just fluffing that up in my memory or something. But overall, it's not a scary game by any means, but like any stealth game, you're scared of anybody blowing your cover. Blood West gets a go for it from me, and I highly recommend it to anyone looking for a stealthy, immersive, Weird West first-person shooter game. Oddly specific, I know, but there's a craving out there for anything Weird West. Blood West is available on PC, GeForce Now, Linux, and Android. Wow, who'd have thought? Not me. So I hope you all have enjoyed your stay. I'm TUSDarryl, and I'll catch you guys later.